Since the turn of the century, only 3 teams have secured footy's most coveted prize on 4 occasions. 2 of those happen to be Geelong and Brisbane. 2 titans of the competition, well versed on footy's biggest stage. After another dramatic season, plenty of ups and downs, it's time to settle the score.
We're ready. We've had a really enjoyable week. We're well prepared. Had a good training session on Wednesday, and this is why you play the game.
We've obviously had a few injuries along the way, and we've been able to deal with a bit of adversity as well, which that's probably what I'm most proud of.
Yes, welcome to AFL Tonight, and it's great to have your company. And what about this vantage point we have at the mighty MCG high in the stands? It is truly the calm before the storm as the Cats and the Lions prepare to go into battle on this hallowed turf tomorrow. If you're after a comprehensive preview of the grand final, you have come to the right place. We'll be with you for the next hour. You'll hear from all the stars ahead of tomorrow. Plus, Nick Dal Santo and Corbin Middlemas will be along for the ride to provide us some in-depth analysis. My name is Drew Jones. I'll take you through the next 60 minutes. There is so much to get through, but of course, official business today in grand final week. Public holiday here in Victoria, and thousands of fans line the streets in Melbourne for the grand final parade. And the story that has really captivated us right through the week has been the fitness of Lions co-captain Lachie Neale, the superstar dual Brownlow medalist. So let's get the latest on where he's at with David Zeta, who has been following this story right throughout the week. David, great to see you. What can you tell us about the fitness of Lachie Neale heading into the grand final tomorrow?
Well, hello to you, Drew. What an evening ahead of a massive day tomorrow. So much excitement at the MCG, outside the MCG, heading into grand final day. And there really has been quite the story around Lachie Neale this week. Of course, he was a 1% chance, in his own words, speaking to the club doctors, even just a couple of weeks ago, or even a week ago. And then the club getting through to the grand final really gave him enough time. He spent a lot of time in the hyperbaric chamber. Josh Dunkley said he could have played last week, Lachie Neale. That's how much work he has put into getting his calf right. We know, of course, that low-grade calf tear would have kept him out for 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum, and he's coming back within 3. It is an incredible story. We have seen so many of them in grand final weeks gone by, and this time around it is Lachie Neale's turn. So he gets the call up from Chris Fagan, and Chris Fagan is adamant he is right to go. There is no risk being taken with Lachie Neale, and that is despite how short this turnaround has been for him. Jared Berry not as lucky, of course, the dislocated shoulder, a second dislocation, so just not taking the risk with him this week, himself pulling out of the grand final. So a pretty selfless call from him. So much centres around Lachie Neale, the dual Brownlow medalist. He had 32 touches against the Cats before he did his calf in the qualifying final loss. They're going to hope for something similar from him this time around. But so much intrigue around the way he goes to start the game. Could he be sub? We still don't know. Still not being put on the radar by Chris Fagan. There is so much intrigue around it, and it will all be answered very soon. But so much to play out for the Lions.
Yeah, dramatic week, hasn't it been? Behind closed doors at Icon Park, that training session yesterday, and right to go after going through the captain's run today. So, David, the Lions are becoming pretty well versed in this whole grand final thing. 3 in a row for them now under Chris Fagan. They're going for back-to-back flags. What's the preparation been like since they've arrived in Melbourne on Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah, pretty calm, cool and collected, Drew. So, of course, they do know this stage, as you said, the 3rd consecutive occasion time they've been to the big dance. So they know what the week entails. I think it holds them in good stead. Josh Dunkley said as much today, Harris Andrews, everyone we spoke to, Will Ashcroft as well, think that just having that experience under your belt certainly counts for a fair bit. So they have got some newcomers on the block when you talk about Ty Gallup, Logan Morris and the like. But I think for the most part, they are pretty confident that they are rested, they are well prepared, despite maybe some of us writing them off after the first week in that qualifying final loss, so they looked a bit battered and bruised. I think they've well and truly answered those critics and said they are ready to perform. So it all looks good for them. The Brisbane Lions, of course, grand final day, the parade that comes with it, they're well accustomed to it, and plenty played out earlier today as well.
Lachie Neale locked in for Saturday's grand final. No risk, according to coach Chris Fagan.
He trained heavily on the weekend, and he's done both training sessions this week. If you watched him train, you'd be mad not to pick him. So medical people have ticked him off. So that's what we're doing.
The man himself admitting it's been a whirlwind few weeks since his calf injury.
Yeah, I thought my season was done a few weeks ago, so yeah, happy to be here. I did a bigger session last weekend and pulled up well from that, so I was pretty confident that it would pull up well from yesterday, which it has, so yeah, I feel good.
And while the dual Brownlow medalist may yet be cast as the sub...
I'm not going to talk about the lineups. They come out an hour before the game and we'll leave it until then.
Fagan confident no backup plans are needed in case the star co-captain goes down.
No. If you did that, you'd have a scenario plan what you'd do if every single player got injured in your team. So, no, that's not something we've talked about.
Jared Berry had a talk with the coach this week, ruling himself out of the match rather than risk another shoulder injury, a selfless move that's left its mark.
Yeah, he's an incredible man, Bez. I get quite emotional when I think about it, to be honest, because I reckon there'd be a lot of guys that would definitely play if they could in his position, and he's put the team first, and we talk about putting the team first all the time, so it's a great example of that.
And to have that conversation with Fags and put his hand up, it's just, yeah, it's inspiring, but it's also energising at the same time because he wants to put the team ahead of himself.
So, of course, so much discussion about Lachie Neale in the lead up to this grand final. His effort to play is extraordinary. He had 32 disposals in the qualifying final against the Cats before he suffered a calf injury. Chris Fagan will be hoping he has a similar level of output planned if the Lions are to topple the Cats.
3 weeks ago, it was Geelong by 38 points in a dominant display. The Lions, though, didn't come away empty-handed.
I think it was a great learning curve for us in that qualifying final. They showed us a few things that we weren't too sure about in terms of in the moment, and so they gave us a few of their secrets, and hopefully we can use that against them on Saturday.
No secret about what needs fixing this time around for Fagan.
You learn more from your losses than you do from your wins, and we learned a fair bit and got a few reminders a few weeks ago. So we think we'll be a little bit different tomorrow with a few things that we do. But more importantly, we just need to play with more intensity than we did last time. So there's been a focus on that.
The focus of the footy world on Saturday's main event. David Zeta, Fox Sports News.
So third grand final appearance in a row for the Brisbane Lions. The Geelong Cats back on the big stage for the first time since 2022. They lost their prelim to the Lions last year in an absolute thriller. So Lachie Neale has taken up so much of our attention from a selection point of view this week, but the Cats have known for a while that Tom Stewart wouldn't be out there. One of the best defenders of the modern generation, 5-time All-Australian, was concussed in that tackle by Mabior Chol against the Hawks. Unfortunately, still in the concussion protocols and no chance of playing. So his disappointment is an opportunity for Reece Stanley, who has been such a trusted member of Chris Scott's side over the years as their number one ruckman. He hasn't played since the last round of the season due to a hamstring injury. He's the man to come into the side as Chris Scott enters his fourth grand final as coach. So many storylines with this brilliant Cat side who have been so consistent over the years. Here's how it panned out today at the grand final parade. One player's selection disappointment is another man's triumph. Reece Stanley called up for another crack at the big dance, with Tom Stewart forced to watch on. The 5-time All-Australian defender virtually irreplaceable.
Yeah, I've never subscribed to the theory when one of your best players goes out that it's just the next man up. They're impossible to replace. And I don't think any team is comfortable going into any game without one of their best players, and Tom's clearly been that for us over a long period of time.
Stanley has missed the entire finals series so far with a hamstring injury, but has done enough to force his way back.
You must have the best hamstrings on the planet right now, mate.
I certainly do, mate. They couldn't feel better right now.
Our strong preference was to have Reece available, so that's the good news story.
The other big selection story in the lead up to the grand final was Lachie Neale's calf. The Cats say they'll do their best to test out the midfielder's durability.
Oh, yeah, definitely, but he's a pretty good player. He hasn't won 2 Brownlows and multiple All-Australians, best and fairest, so the guy's done it all. So we're really respectful of just how bloody good he is.
Bailey Smith has kept a low profile so far this week, but Cam Mooney managed to track him down during the parade.
Tell us about the week. How's that been?
Yeah, it's been good. Been long, but yeah, I'm just ready to go, mate. So just ready for all this sort of stuff to be over and that first bounce at 2:30. Trying to soak it in, but it's hard when you've just got your eyes on the prize.
This time last year, the Cats could only watch on with envy as the Brisbane Lions took part in the grand final parade. But in 2025, there's a big difference. They've got Bailey Smith, who's had a brilliant and colourful first season for the Cats.
Yeah, look, he's really helped. I think it's a good way to describe it. I haven't heard it described as adding colour before. I'm gonna use that as my own because I think it is a good description. He's and I think we, to an extent, knew that he was going to change us.
11 Cats will play their first grand final, including Ollie Dempsey, who's been on the phone to Gary Ablett Jr. this week.
I've caught up with him early in the week and I was on the phone with him yesterday when I was driving down, and he's just the same as he always is, just have fun and back my instincts, and we're here for a reason and I'm here for a reason.
Geelong into their 20th grand final in club history, searching for their 11th premiership. Of course, one of the great traditions of Grand Final Week is the parade, which I guess we come to take advantage of now even more because of the public holiday here in Victoria. Massive crowds, again, watching their heroes through the streets, and then everyone moving to the MCG to see that cup raised. Georgie Dickinson was amongst the fans today for us.
Thousands of fans have packed the streets of Melbourne to cheer on their favourite players from the Geelong Cats and Brisbane Lions. The annual Grand Final parade kicked off at Melbourne Park, where fans gathered from the early hours to grab a prime view of the parade. Excitement and anticipation building for the big dance. Fans starting their love of the sport young. A day out with the family, ready to cheer their team home.
It's a great atmosphere down here. It's a really great day. We really enjoy bringing the kids down and making memories with the Lions, winning hopefully.
Who signed your jumper? Everyone. The Lions, no stranger to the parade, here last year. For Geelong, it's a different story. The last time they were in the grand final back in 2022, the parade was on the Yarra River due to COVID. But for fans here today, some more confident than others of their team taking a win. Do you think they've got what it takes to win another premiership?
No.
You're not a true supporter then, are you?
I am.
Just realistic?
Yeah.
You're obviously Cat supporters. Do you think they're going to win tomorrow?
Yes.
Do you think they've got what it takes?
Yes.
And for some dedicated fans, they braved the cold and early hours to line up outside the MCC, even getting to catch a glimpse of the Premiership Cup. A little touch of the Premiership Cup, I see. Who got a touch of the prized possession?
I got a touch of the cup, so yeah. Hopefully the Cats can win, so that was nice of him to stop and let us do that.
Did you think it was fake?
Oh, no, just initially, and then the bing, the light. You know.
What's it feel like? Is it heavy?
It's awesome. Yeah.
Gates open at 8. What are you going to do to kill those next 26 hours?
Talk a lot of football, meet some new friends.
You come along here and it's a great atmosphere and we'll just live the dream.
It's just one more sleep until the big dance gets underway on Saturday afternoon.
All right, so much more to come on this special edition of AFL Tonight on Grand Final Eve. We've got Nick Dal Santo to join us shortly, a special guest, but we've actually got more than one special guest this evening. The Premiership Cup is with us here at the MCG. That's what the Lions and the Cats will be fighting for tomorrow. Stay with us on AFL Tonight after the break. Nick Dal Santo to preview all the action. Since the turn of the century, only 3 teams have secured footy's most coveted prize on 4 occasions. 2 of those happen to be Geelong and Brisbane. 2 titans of the competition, well versed on footy's biggest stage. After another dramatic season, plenty of ups and downs, it's time to settle the score.
We're ready. We've had a really enjoyable week. We're well prepared. We had a good training session on Wednesday, and this is why you play the game.
We've obviously had a few injuries along the way, and we've been able to deal with a bit of adversity as well, which that's probably what I'm most proud of.
Welcome back to AFL Tonight. This is our 1-hour Grand Final Eve special, and look who we've got. Nick Dal Santo, great to see you.
Good evening, lovely to be here.
And we've got a special guest, the Cup.
It is an extremely special guest. This is about as close as... I'm not touching it. I don't want to... Well, I haven't deserved to touch this one. And then prior to that, I never wanted to jinx myself or the footy club. So it does look beautiful, though.
I've seen this Stephen Milne bounce the ball like 10 or 12 times this week, and every time my heart sinks for you.
Is there any chance he would have just grabbed it? Just grab
Dive
it. Don't
on
let
it.
it bounce. Just grab
Dive
it and
on
kick
it.
a goal.
Some desperation building. All right, Dal, we've got you here because we want to break down the grand final because this is going to be an epic contest. I think we've all, I guess, had our 2 cents on Lachie Neale this week and whether it is a risk to play him. What's your take on whether, Chris Fagan, how close this is, how close this call was?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of pieces within this, Drew. The first bit is we don't truly know all the details and the hoops that Lachie Neale would have had to have jumped through to even be up for selection. Yep. Now, my first piece on this is, if it wasn't Lachie Neale and it was a younger player, the conversation would have been over. It would have been completely taken out of his hands. But you've got a senior player and also a captain of the football club that is putting his hand up. So there's an honesty and a trust piece that must go within that when Fags is having those conversations. Then you add in the layers of what he is capable at. And if you want to try and work out the percentages, is he at 70, 80%? And is that 70 or 80 better than what the next player would have been able to bring in? Then off the third piece off the back is, what's your contingencies? So let's say he does do his calf. Let's say it's the worst case scenario like Scott Pendlebury last weekend. How do you replace him? Do you have the dominoes and be able to move the pieces to be able to replace what he could have possibly done in the midfield? And once you've worked through all of that and he has to get through the training sessions, which he did, he would have to be extremely honest and look the club and Fags in the eye say, hey, I am 100% or I think I am at this stage. If it changes, it changes. Then you just need to make a call, and they have. So you've got to back it in as it currently stands.
I spoke to Josh Dunkley yesterday, came into Fox Footy before AFL 360, and he said there was not even a hint of a limp. Like, he was at full tilt the whole time, and he said as far back as last week, he thought he looks right to go. He did 10Ks on last Saturday on the same day as the prelim final, and he's made every post a winner. So he's done really well. I guess the Neale story has almost overshadowed Tom Stewart being out, but this guy is an absolute superstar. How much of a loss is it for the Cats?
It's a huge loss. I mean, we can stand here. We've been speaking about it all week, but they'll find a way to cover it. Now, I truly believe that they will. Geelong are as good as anybody about managing these sort of situations. But within that, he did that injury or got knocked out late towards at the end of the first quarter last week. Yet they were able to find a way to cover for that. And they were down at that stage. So if that wasn't the greatest disruption in a prelim, what else could nearly be worse than that? Yet they found a way. Not only did they cover for him, they made up the deficit and then they went on to win that game. It was a fantastic, high-intense game of football. So the Cats were able to do it last week. Then you give Chris Scott and the club 7 more days to prep for that. How do they cover for it? Who is it? What does the rotations look like? I feel more comfortable this week that they'll be able to do that, rather than the disruption of it happening throughout the course of the game last week. They're an incredible club. Their deviation or their variation between their very best and their very worst is as minimal as anyone in the competition has been for years. I can't stand here and say Tom Stewart isn't a fantastic player, and it wouldn't be better for him not to be playing, but they'll find a way.
So we spoke to Josh Dunkley again today, and he said watching Patrick Dangerfield last Friday night in the prelim final, he was like, I want to crack at him.
Nice.
I want to have a go and play on maybe one of the greatest finals players of all time. Do you think that matchup materialises?
Yeah, well, that's if they choose to play more in the midfield. Now, we saw what he did last week, and you run out of words to describe Patrick Dangerfield's career and his performance last week. And the bit I loved about last week, Drew, we're in a team sport. As challenging as any game in the world, and rarely, if ever, does an individual take over a game, given the complexity and the nature of the team aspect. But he did. Every contest last week was like it was his last one in his life, and he impacted in so many different ways. So he's a huge threat, and he reminded us again why he's one of the all-time greats. If he plays in the midfield, I think Josh Dunkley is quite possibly the only player that can probably go step for step with him. And it's still a huge challenge for Dunks. If he goes forward, clearly he'll have to hand him over. And keep in mind, Dangerfield's played the majority of this year and last year as more of a forward style. So it's then who does he go to? Well, I think it might be Gardner, and I thought that worked relatively well 3 weeks ago, and I can't see many others putting their hand up for him.
I reckon that Dangerfield showed himself to be the AFL's LeBron. So no matter what, LeBron will take his team as far as it can go, regardless of how well his teammates are playing. And then when his team is good, and he locks in, he takes them all the way. And I think that's the sort of performance we saw.
The only concern is LeBron's also lost a lot of championship games along the way as well. So we'll see how Danger goes tomorrow
as well.
Yeah,
but
true.
If he's on the dais tomorrow holding the Premiership Cup, he's got one of the great CVs. What does that do for his legacy?
It's a fantastic question, and it's a position of luxury for Danger. I think his legacy is already set in everything that he's already achieved. If he becomes a Premiership captain, I think it gives him another layer, but I don't think it takes away from anything that he's already done. You think about the turn of the century and the great plays that we've seen in the last 25 years, and then you pose, where does Danger sit within that? It's a really difficult conversation because you think of Buddy and Ablett Jr. and Juddy and a handful of these guys, Hodge, but he's in that conversation. So regardless of what happens tomorrow afternoon, he's still in that conversation. He just starts to work his way up a little bit higher. A two-time premiership player, I think, is exceptional. Yep. Such a hard thing to achieve one. I remember him winning one a few years ago, and he's walking around and he goes, I finally got one. Yeah. Well, you might finally have two, Danger, because that's where it's currently looking like it might go.
He didn't want to talk about it today, but he did put on Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins in the change rooms last week.
Okay, I like that.
So he has taken it literally into his own hands. He's even taken over the playlist. All right, so one of the big storylines for the qualifying final, really convincing win by Geelong, was the job that O'Sheen Mullen did on Hugh McCluggage. So I'm really intrigued by this. Does Chris Scott go back to the well and try again, or does he need to change things, 3 weeks later?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, I don't think you need to fix it. Now, that doesn't mean you guarantee they get the same result, and Hugh McCluggage clearly had a very quiet night. One of his worst days of footy probably this year in the last couple of years. He's an All-Australian, he's a quality player, and Hugh's last couple of games have been exceptional. Off the chart sort of numbers and impact on the game, particularly last week in the prelim. But he's also been sitting there for the last 7 days, Hugh McCluggage, knowing exactly what the matchup will be. Yeah. Knowing that 3 weeks ago you got beaten comfortably, that would be sitting in the back of the mind. And I reckon we might find out a little bit about McCluggage tomorrow, mentally. We know physically he's a superb runner, uses the ball well, but he got beaten. Is he the type of player who said, hey, never again, not on my watch am I allowing Mullins to do this to me again? Or does it go a little bit the other way and you go, oh, he got me once and I just don't know how I'm going to work my way through it. But once again, Fags and McCluggage have had time to prep for it. I think they would know what's coming. Can you position slightly different? Can you do a little bit more research on Mullins about how he actually tags you, where he stands, and how you might be able to exploit him? 46
players get a crack at potentially having the best day of their lives tomorrow at the MCG. Who are the two key players, one from each team?
Yeah, well, I think Zach Bailey for the Brisbane Lions, and we've all become huge fans of the way he's played his football. We do. We love him, and he's been enormous in a couple of finals on behalf of the Brisbane Lions. What we've loved about his season this year is he's gone more into the midfield, so we've loved him as that half forward. He's gone onto the wing, and now he's playing a little bit more midfield. I think his versatility is a huge bonus for the Brisbane Lions and what they may need tomorrow. And let's say worst case scenario, Lachie Neale goes down. Fingers crossed that he doesn't. This guy's just sitting there waiting for an opportunity. So I think he will be significant tomorrow, either way, regardless of how the result goes.
And from a Cats perspective?
I'm going with Jez. Let's just keep it really simple. Jeremy Cameron has been one of the best key forwards in the competition for years. But once again, it's the way that he does it. He's got the lead, he's got the aerial game to take the most spectacular mark you'll ever see, but he's also got the ground level game. And I think that triple threat is just potent. Hence why he's been a brilliant player and it's just an absolute pleasure to watch. He does it on the big stage, he does it on the small stage. He is primed, he gets up the ground, he gets back through his work rate, and I reckon he's their key mover tomorrow.
And maybe some more antics with the Premiership medallion.
Let's hope so.
Again.
Let's hope another cow gets a medal.
Running out of time, Dale, but you had earmarked Brad Close as your role player that might step up.
Yep.
I can't wait to see someone who elevates their career with a big performance tomorrow. But before we let you go, your tip, why, and your Norm Smith.
I think all being equal, the Cats get it done. I think it's around the 32-point number, so not as close as maybe what some would be hoping. And I'm going to go with Ollie Dempsey. I think there's always that style of player that just sneaks under the radar a little bit. He's had a fantastic year. We're all looking for the big boys, but I reckon one of the younger, probably less, highlighted guys might get it done tomorrow, and I think that'd be an awesome story.
Well, he's already caught up with Gary Ablett Jr. this week, and they chatted on the phone yesterday. So
there you
his
go.
preparation
Learn from
is
the best.
unmatched with one of the greats. So, Dale, we appreciate your time as always.
Thanks,
and your year on AFL Tonight has been sensational. We do have to pull you in one more time on Monday to review the grand final. So thanks for coming to the MCG.
Thanks.
Really
have a great weekend.
Still plenty to come on AFL Tonight as well after Nick departs. We've got Corbin Middlemas to discuss all the big stories from the AFL so far this season, and a little bit later, David Teeter's going to touch it as well at the MCG.
The start of the season has been postponed as a tropical cyclone looms near the Queensland coast. Noah Bolter, he has pleaded guilty to an assault charge in a New South Wales court. Richmond handed Bolter a 4-match ban over the incident.
To be fair, that's about 6 questions I've answered around Noah. Our job right now is he's been sanctioned. We're going to support him. from now moving forward, and we've got a massive game against Melbourne.
Move on, guys.
Yeah, no more questions around it.
We're done with Bolter.
After yet another abhorrent racially charged attack on an AFL player, Ross Lyon has had enough.
It's more than racism, it's hate.
The relationships with the club, Ruby, were just too strong, and that his relationship with Ross Lyon was too strong, and his belief in what the club is building was too strong for him to go back to South Australia.
I played in the AFL for 10 years for the West Coast Eagles, and I'm a bisexual man.
Jamara Eagle-Hagan has taken a leave of absence from the Western Bulldogs to deal with his personal issues.
I've never seen a coaching group more frustrated with a whole range of things.
I know we're the Gold Coast Suns, but if this was being spoken about, and don't get me wrong, Matt Rowe's a superstar, but if this was spoken about with Nick Dacos, Collingwood would tear the place down.
Are you confident that the players are still buying the message?
Yeah, very.
Right now, we're in a position where we need to evolve. I love that challenge as a coach. Our players are up for that change, but we need to do it together.
So the board came to a decision yesterday that they were going to remove Simon Goodwin from his head coaching role.
Stephen King officially coronated as Melbourne's new senior coach, the 46-year-old ready to hit the ground running. This is a significant AFL restructure, as big as you're likely to see for some time. The former Geelong Premiership winner and long-standing Swans CEO was headhunted by the game's CEO, Andrew Dillon, to effectively become his 2IC. The new AFL head of football, Greg Swan, says he is hoping to speed up play before the end of this season. Tasmania's path to the AFL is on shaky ground amid ongoing political uncertainty in the Apple Isle.
The work that this club is doing, can I just say? This club is powered by our future generations, by our kids and by our grandkids. It's an opportunity to bring this state together.
More and more Bombers are going to ground. Brad Scott confirming another injury blow.
Jeremy McGovern has announced his retirement after the AFL's concussion panel recommended he walk away from the game.
First and foremost, I just want to address my sincere apology and serious embarrassment of what's happened over the last few days and weeks.
It's been a difficult time for me and my family when you're dealing with things largely in the media.
Amid his bold recruiting moves, Mitchell happy to be cast as the villain by some.
It's fine.
Tom De Koning has been seen exiting Carlton for the final time.
Met with a young man and worked out we had a first date and see if we liked each other.
Did you like it, Donald?
Yeah, I could go on a second date with Jack.
Because I tell you what I don't do, I don't get my phone and go, get on the X and listen to garbage being reported with no rigour.
How good's it, 82,000 versus Collingwood on a Saturday night at the G? How good's that?
It's beautiful, mate. Not getting that at Ballarat, so.
There's no real filter with Baz, so you come to accept that, and I don't think it's going to change.
Welcome back to AFL Tonight, our 1 hour special live from the MCG as we count down to the grand final. Corbin Middlemas is with me. Hello, Corbin. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Drew.
Oh, how good is it? It's unreal. We can't wait for the game tomorrow. So we just saw there so many stories to get our teeth stuck into. I think let's start with Bailey Smith because he is going to play such a massive role tomorrow. I've thought about it. It's the good, the bad and the ugly with Baz, isn't it?
Yeah, Lee Matthews would love it, by the way, all the combination all in one with Bailey Smith. But he's the ultimate outlier, isn't he? He's the outlier in terms of the Cats and what he gives them and certainly in how their group comes together. And Chris Scott sort of spoke to us much today at the press conference where he said, look, he's a different personality type. He's something that we're not used to inside our group. And in terms of his play on field, he's an outlier as well. There's very few that can do what he can do. He's got amazing running ability, and we saw the year that he was able to produce. He's a lightning rod for controversy and full of talking points for us, obviously, in the media, and we saw that play out again this year. And even in this final series, as you can see there, this was only a couple of weeks ago, obviously, after Geelong's qualifying final win. So can he be an outlier again tomorrow? And I think if he plays at his best, it's going to go a long way to Geelong winning.
It's ironic that grand final week has probably been the quietest for him of the entire season. We didn't hear from him at all until today. He trained as normal. There was no injury scares, no controversy around him. How much of this stuff, particularly, we saw this recently, a couple of run-ins with photographers, the same photographer this year. How much does his off-field stuff, the negatives, take away from the man himself?
It feels like the overall package, doesn't it? That it's kind of, people are drawn to the bad boy, and we've seen that right throughout the history of sport for whatever reason. I don't know if people feel like they vicariously live through them, that the rules perhaps don't apply for them the same way they do for everybody else, and in a way that kind of draws people in. As you said, he hasn't done any traditional media across the course of the year, despite the new television deal that was in place, the new media rights agreement under the CBA. So he's been able to sort of dance to the beat of his own drummer, and we'll see sort of what tune's playing tomorrow afternoon.
Absolutely. So Andrew Dillon actually went out of his way to have a fireside meeting with him during the season. And the AFL administration has been under the microscope this year. It feels like more than any other, to the point where there was a couple of regrettable incidents for them where they sort of publicly blamed the umpires for an issue with Lachie Schultz's concussion, which they had to then backtrack on, and then the Willie Rioli death threats, which probably wasn't handled as well as it could have been. In the end, Corbin, they sort of blew the place up a little bit, and they brought in Greg Swan and Tom Harley. So what's been your interpretation of the way the AFL sort of handled this year?
It was a clumsy start, wasn't it? And I actually thought, if anything, the restructure midway through the year bought them some time. It almost kind of reset the clock a little bit, where I think all of us in the footy fraternity are thinking, right, well, Andrew Dillon's got the chance to put the people in place that he wants in the key seats and the right positions on the bus. So obviously, as you mentioned, Tom Harley and obviously Greg Swan coming into that football department. And as a result, it felt like it almost reset the clock, bought them a little bit of time, and now we'll judge them, I guess, going forward once they've had their chance to put their feet under the desk. I think for Laura Kane in particular, it was a series of unfortunate events for her, where she was given this enormous portfolio. Ultimately, it came along at a time and at a stage where there was lots of rocky episodes for the game, and so it probably seems like a little bit, at least if you put your finger in the wind, that she's been marginalised somewhat, or at least been had part of her portfolio split from her, as the AFL are holding to the line. She's a great administrator, and she will be for years to come to the game. So I'm glad that she remains on the executive despite the changes that have happened.
I think it needs to be acknowledged that when Gillan McLachlan was CEO, he had Andrew Dillon and Travis Auld as his lieutenants underneath him, and then Travis Auld goes to the F1, and obviously Gil goes, and Andrew goes up a slot, and probably didn't have the guys around him that he needed to get all that heavy lifting done. So as a result of Greg Swan coming in, there feels like there's quite a bit of momentum about some potential tweaks to rules and some different things coming in next year. The wildcard round has always appealed to me. Maybe it's because I'm an American sports fan, but I love the idea of there being 9 or 10 teams in with a chance, but then you give it a bit of extra incentive to finish in the top 6. Maybe that comes in next year, and then this might be the last time we see the bounce, maybe last touch out of bounds. Where does the direction of the rules sit with you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I'd love a wildcard weekend. I can't see the drawbacks. I mean, really, it gives us 2 additional finals. What's not to love? So rather than sitting around in that week waiting for the AFL men's finals to start, we basically get a couple more elimination games. There's more jeopardy on that front. So I'd be a big fan of wildcards being introduced. I would rather that, to be honest, than the pre-grand final bye. I know that's had a bit of momentum this week, and it's an unfortunate set of events for Tom Stewart, but I'd much rather keep the bye where it is, and if we're doing anything, add a couple of additional finals on that front. Some other things that you touched on there, in addition to what you touched on there, I mean, clearly it feels like the umpires are going to get the votes, aren't they, for the Brownlow medal going forward? They offered them last year. They weren't taken up on, and you could sort of change a little. You could see the change in the umpires during the week.
By the way they spoke,
The discourse sort of where it was on Monday, or at least Tuesday morning, compared to where it was by the end of the week. So I think if you're sort of forecasting, you can probably expect that that'll be the case going forward for next year. I think the biggest problem that he's facing the game at the moment is clearly equalisation. So we've got a grand final here tomorrow, which is really going to decide, are we living through the Geelong era or the Brisbane Lions era? But either way, it's one of these teams that's going to win 5 flags this century, which is only 25 years old. So that's a hell of a stamp on this particular era. But there's also 9 teams in the competition in this 18-year cycle that haven't won one. And obviously, under every 18 years, 18 teams should be winning a premiership under the equalisation model. We're a long way short from that at just 50%. So I think that's going to be the toughest one that faces Andrew Dillon and his administration.
Well, for the Lions, it's the father, son and the academy sort of pick generation against the free agent and the trading way of Geelong. So it's an interesting position that equalisation is in at the moment. So just talking about this new administration and the fact that you felt like they got a fresh start, did they lose a bit of their, they lost some shine with the Isaac Rankin homophobic slur incident, did you think?
I mean, they flinched at the last hurdle to make it sort of 4 weeks rather than 5 weeks, and Adelaide were able to successfully argue down a week as part of that. And so that probably took a little bit of the punch off it from Andrew Dillon, something that he's been strong on. I guess what I would say, if I don't think homophobic slurs in the competition have gone from 0 to 6 in 2 years. So clearly this administration, compared to every other previous administration in the history of the game, is prepared to do something about it. Yeah. So I can't knock that. I also feel like it sends a very strong message that, if you are going to use this kind of language on the field, you're going to miss some significant footy. And for Isaac Rankin, he obviously learnt that the hard way. I guess my question coming out of it all, do people understand that you can't say it and you're going to be hit with a huge penalty? Do people understand how and why it's a bad thing? I think that's the next step. That are we educating our clubs, our players and our footy fans enough as to why this is something that needs to be stamped out? And the reason for that is, this is a health issue. As much as things like this get politicised, everything's politicised nowadays, Drew. Back in the day, a doctor told you to do something. Nowadays, it's, that's a political issue. But when it comes to sort of LGBT matters, we know that LGBT youth are 5 times more likely to contemplate suicide than their straight friends. So it is an important message. Language goes a long way to try and curb that. That's why all of this happens and why we need to do something about it in the game of Australian rules football.
I think there's a few 1%ers that the AFL can fix up here. And even I think a point you raised was that isn't there a WhatsApp group where some of the answers to the inclusion in sport, quiz, they get shared and they don't really do it properly. So I think we can fix up a few little things. So there is some frustration at AFL House, Corbin, around what we've seen this year with Sam Mitchell in particular meeting with, say, Zach Merritt, Oscar Allen, and perhaps there's potential for an anti-tampering rule to come in the future. But I just wanted to talk to you about this glut of contracted players who want to leave their football clubs. And I guess Zach Merritt has been the one that we've talked about so much recently. How have you viewed the way that he's handled this situation?
Well, you're probably more in this space than I am on a day-to-day basis, Drew. I mean, how do you think the AFL look at this? Do they look at this as, anti-headlines are good for the game? Or do they look at it as, this is a bit uncomfortable. We've got a star player in one of the poorer teams in the competition who are dragging around decades of disappointment behind them, wanting to leave to go to a team that's won more premierships in the last 60 years than anyone else?
I think what's new here is that Sam Mitchell is talking openly in a final series about meeting with a player that has 2 years left on his contract, personally meeting with them. But the AFL love trade talk, and it can go on all year. And if players, and this is not new that players want to leave in contract, but it's just that particular part of it, I reckon, maybe is just rising the angst a little bit at AFL House. But, I mean, it's great fodder for us. We can talk about it all day. I mean, it was a big enough event in itself, Zach Merritt coming to the Brownlow. Plus, you had the medal later on, but it was a huge news event. So I think we love the trade talk, but the AFL, maybe they just want to tighten things up a little bit there.
What's your lean if you had to sit here right now on grand final eve and say, where does Zach Merritt play round 1 next year? What jumper is he wearing?
I think he's wearing the Hawthorn Guernsey next year, isn't he? Well, you're an Essendon man.
Would
you have him back?
Maybe I've still got the blinkers on. I feel like he'll still be wearing an Essendon jumper next year. There's a lot of water that's got to go under the Narrows Bridge before we get there.
Let's talk about Jamarra Ugle-Hagan before I have to let you go. I mean, this is an extraordinary situation. One of the most talented players in the competition had the world at his feet, and now it appears he's on the edge of being out of the league. How have you viewed the way he's handled it in the Bulldogs?
I'm just trying to think on the way in about when we saw something like this previously, and the name that came to mind, unfortunately, was the late, great Cam McCarthy, who sat out a year after obviously leaving GWS to go to Fremantle. He wanted to go a year earlier, different set of circumstances. Trade wasn't able to happen, and basically he missed an entire year of footy, not on his physical prime, but at least on the rise when he was a young man at a similar stage of Jamarra Ugle-Hagan's career. I think the one thing we would probably all agree on, it's been a pretty sad set of circumstances, hasn't it? That this guy should be on the up and up, and his trajectory should be sky high. More importantly, he should be enjoying his life and what he's doing as a young man trying to find his place in the world. So whether that's in the AFL system or outside of it, I think that's what I want, and that's what everyone wants for Jamarra. So I think the first thing he needs to discover is that what he wants? Does he want to be part of an AFL system? And if he doesn't, that's absolutely fine. There are plenty of things that he can go and do and make a valuable contribution to society and whatever he wants to do in his life. It doesn't have to be part of an AFL system. But as we know, the guidelines are pretty tight for AFL players, and unfortunately he hasn't been able to live up to those this year. And if he wants to be an AFL player next year, he's going to have to demonstrate to a club that he is able to work inside those tramlines that are laid out for him.
Yeah, Damien Hardwick's thinking about maybe having him live with him up on the Gold Coast if that trade goes through to the Suns. So before I let you go, and we've appreciated your contributions to AFL Tonight right throughout the year, Corbin, have you got a tip for us? You're going to be calling the game for the ABC. Can't wait to hear your voice, but what do you think is going to win?
I've been on the Brisbane Lions all year, so I feel like I'm either going to go down with the ship or I'm going to go the whole way with the Lions. So they beat them on 3 different occasions, 3 different grounds, 3 different ways before their qualifying final meeting. And there's an interesting quirk in the history of the game. I'm sure you would have seen these stats during the week. Under this final system, when the qualifying final repeats on grand final day, 6th time that it's happened, on 4 of the previous 5 occasions, the qualifying final loser has come back around the long way around the mountain and beaten the side they lost to on grand final day. So hopefully history can repeat for the Brisbane Lions' sake tomorrow. I think they'll win. And put me down for Will Ashcroft to go back-to-back in the Norm Smith.
I love it. Corbin, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Stay with us on AFL Tonight. David Zita's going to come in next to me shortly. We'll do a bit of trade news and then our final preview for the grand final. Stay with us.
To Berry, to Cameron, too quick for him. Next off the line was Zorko. Ashcroft has a good look. Oh no! That is incredible! Simply brilliant. Simply Will Ashcroft. Suns back by 3. Josh Dacos back out there, but Anderson straight out of the middle. Puts it to Weller. Keeps on going. The captain!
Darcy got moving out the back. Nimble as ever. Has a look. Backs his talent. Oh, it is prodigious. The run to paradise. Forget of it. He shows the ball and slams it into the second deck.
Gresham's the first in the foot race. Kept it in play. Caddy's there round the back. Has he done it? I reckon he has. It's a miraculous goal from the young man.
Sits it up. Who's going to be the leaper? Darcy's down there.
Oh.
And Pearce gets forward. Any score and they lead. A goal. Alex Pearce.
Wow.
The hero.
Now Cripps with a lethal kick through the middle. Releases hot. Rioli with a big chase. About to be run down. It's got him. What a chase from Rioli.
The umpires put the whistle away. Seconds tick. Lear gets there. Crazy stuff. We will remember this one for eternity. The one they won for Travis and Kenny.
And off they go. We've never seen this in AFL footy before. Marshall says thank you very much. Oh, he's got it, the superstar. Hold your breath. Cross your fingers. He sets it on its way. Lazia's on fire.
Spills through again. Suns with the run of the footy. Swallow held. He's held Swallow. And a big opportunity here. He had opportunities to leave. He's stuck with the Suns. He wanted to see them rise. He goes long. Swallow. Incredible.
Too much hang time. They fly. They need to crumb the Dockers. They will get it. Hammett. Siren. The agony and the ecstasy of sport.
Yes, some of the memorable moments of season 2025. It's great to have your company on AFL Tonight. David Zito is back with us.
Hello, Drew.
David. Good
It's good to be with you as always.
Again, all right, we're going to talk a little bit of grand final, but first, let's talk the trade period.
Yes, let's.
And that we joked about this on AFL Tonight a couple of months ago. Charlie Curnow. It is a big story, and is he going to be leaving the Carlton Football Club?
Oh, that's when you played it down and said there's no story to see here, and then he wants to leave the football club and go to a different football club. So, of course, I think everyone knows he's kicking and screaming almost to get out of that club. He doesn't want to be there next year. He wants to be somewhere like a Geelong, a change of scenery. Sydney's still very much in the race. I think the issue for the Cats in terms of trying to get Curnow is that they've got someone like Rowan Marshall who's interested in coming to the club. So he's a lot easier to get, even though St Kilda are saying he's staying with us, he's contracted.
Yep.
It's much harder to get Charlie Curnow, who the club publicly and privately are adamant will not be going anywhere. He'll be playing here next year. They've cleaned the decks at the club. They've got everything moved on. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about his relationship with coach Michael Voss, and Vossi is still there. But I think they fully expect Charlie Curnow to be there next year. But there is a lot of water to go under the bridge, and he is not going to leave any stone unturned, I don't think, to try and get out.
Well, it was interesting seeing he was at the Cats game, the prelim on Friday night, and then how did Geelong get this deal done? Like their first-round picks aren't worth as much as everyone else's because they're always at the top of the ladder, so it's a fascinating situation. But it's like Charlie Curnow came back from holiday to, again, say to the club, please let me leave.
Please let me leave.
It's a remarkable
from
situation.
my multi-million-dollar deal.
Yes, and Gold Coast, I'm sure, will be very interested as well. I mean, key forward for them, a senior key forward would be massive.
But again, they've got someone like, we speak about Jamari Ugle-Hagan, who would cost them nothing, effectively, in a draft sense, and they try and bring him in and try and get him back up to scratch. Obviously, it's a far different conversation when you're looking at someone like Charlie Curnow with Jamari and all the off-field issues he's been dealing with. But I think that's certainly one to watch. Charlie Curnow, one of the big three, I think, in this upcoming trade period.
Yeah, so Christian Petrarca, the noise is sort of re-emanating here that he could leave the club, and Adelaide has been talked about. I think it's been made pretty public that he would prefer to be at a big Melbourne club. So is it possible that we see him end up at the Crows?
Well, I still think somewhere like Gold Coast is probably somewhere that would be interesting. I think he wouldn't mind being there. I think you look at the lifestyle, getting up a bit more sun, and going with Damien Hardwick, who is a coach who is absolutely driven with his players and is someone I think he could see himself playing under for sure, as you would with someone like Damien Hardwick. And the fact that he'd be in a premiership window almost straight away and would be part of that culture up there, I think that would be certainly very appealing. Again, it is hard to get the deal done, but I think the main thing is this year it is far different. The stakes and the state of play is far different. Melbourne are much more open to this than they were last season. Last season it was, I don't care how much you want to get out, you're staying put. Now, again, they've cleaned the decks, and I think they're open to. We saw with Stephen May, I know this is a different calibre of player. I think they're more open to that conversation, so that certainly facilitates it. They might not be an official trade request as yet, but I think it's certainly something that's being openly spoken about, respectfully as well. So this is a far more amicable situation than it was this time last year.
And we have talked about Zach Merritt ad nauseum.
And to him.
Yes, and we had the chance to speak to him on Brownlow night. He said he's going to have these conversations with the club over the next couple of weeks in the lead up to trade period. But is it likely that we see him end up at Hawthorn with Sam Mitchell, which is exactly what the Hawks are hoping for?
Well, he's still got so many more moves to make, Zach Merritt, and still, I know he's already done a fair bit so far, but there is still so much time between now and deadline day where he can do a bit more to try and get himself out of that football club and maybe formally request a trade and try and make it completely unforeseeable.
There's no coming back, though.
No, but there has been a fair bit going on already, and we did speak to him. It does seem like it's had a pretty big impact on him, the amount of vitriol directed towards him and the criticism of him and the way that he's been handling himself, and I'm sure that would be having an effect on him, as he told you. But I also think, and we still don't know if he's going to the BNF next week, which is quite extraordinary. He'll win his 6th BNF. He's virtually a shoo-in to win his 6th BNF, and he might not be there. That's a really pivotal point, I think, because if he's not there, that speaks to where he sits, I think. So his attendance or lack thereof will be a big telling point. Still no side yet willing to lock in whether he'll be there or not. They say they expect him there, but his side not committing to it just yet.
All right, really quickly before we go, David, have you got a tip for tomorrow? I know, try and tip with your head and not your heart.
My head says Geelong, Drew, believe it or not.
And your heart says?
Geelong, because I think they've just been a very good side. They haven't put a foot wrong. They won't have Tom Stewart, obviously, but I think the way they are placed, they play well without him. I think they are well placed, and they couldn't have done anything better on the field than they have done this year. I think it's theirs to lose. What about you?
Bulletproof, the Cats, I think. They get the job done. They pull away late. It's going to be a cracking grand final. I think Norm Smith, Bailey Smith, he's had a massive year, and Dangerfield, a little bit of a cough, so I think it's going to be Bailey Smith. Yeah, David, appreciate your time.
Appreciate you as always, Drew.
Thank you so much for your company on AFL Tonight. We'll catch you on Monday for our last show of the year.